All right, let's bring in the panel. The future First Lady of Florida and the chair of the Education and Freedom Economic Policy over there at America First Policy Institute, Erika Donalds. Welcome back to the show, Erika. Our buddy and Philadelphia correspondent, Chris Stigall. And back, new to the show, rather, Katie Zacharia, amazing commentator. You've seen her work all over social media and on other conservative channels. Guys, great to see you. Erika, let me just throw this out at you and start this. Everyone's like celebrating the government is back open today. Yay. And I don't know. Most people know the difference. Here's the question for you. What do you put the odds that we're back in this situation on January 30th?
Oh, well, they're pretty high, especially based on how the Democrats have responded to some of their own, deflecting and going to vote with the Republicans. I expect that they're going to try to put up another fight in anticipation of the midterm elections. They think that what they did worked, right? Because of the outcomes of Tuesday's elections last week. They think that their fight against Donald Trump motivated their base to get out. That could be true. We're talking about blue states, obviously. But unfortunately, and I joke that, oh, good, Congress is back in session. They can go back to getting paid for doing nothing. We're not going to see a lot of activity between now and then, certainly not all of the appropriations bills that are necessary to truly fund the government in a responsible manner. So we will be in this situation in January, and we'll have the same talking points and the same fight against Donald Trump from the Democrats.
Chris Stigall, to Erika's point, so there's 12 appropriations bills. They actually, as part of this deal, took 3 of them off the table. So we're not going to have another problem with transportation, SNAP, or the military, right? And so you've got 9 of the 12 that are funded only till January 30th. I don't think we're going to do a ton on healthcare between now and then. So I think Erika's onto something. We're going to be back in the same position. We're just going to have less government to worry about than we did this time. I feel like the same movie's just going to play.
Undoubtedly, I agree completely with Erika. I would say that it appears, and I'm optimistic actually, that Republicans do, Mike Johnson seems to, and I think Thune over in the Senate want to have a discussion again about Obamacare. I don't think Democrats necessarily played this well. Now that they funded it in such a way and organized it in such a way that we'd wind up at this place on purpose, John Fetterman told us that this week. Now they didn't get it funded, and now this conversation is going to drag into the new year, and I think that the American public needs to relitigate Obamacare to expose it for the sham that it is, so I'm happy to have it. And I also hear over at the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, is going to release a big audit of SNAP. So I'm all for the Republicans continuing to look at failed government systems and wasteful, fraudulent spending. I'm totally for those conversations continuing to be at the fore, which is why, and I know we're going to talk about it later, Democrats are saying, Epstein, look over there again. I think they want out of the funding and fraud conversation.
Katie, here's the problem I have. I agree with Chris Stigall 100%. The Obamacare sucks. I actually, own a company, so I have to deal with healthcare for people that are on the exchanges that we get it through, or that we have to deal with. Costs are out of control. Doctors are opting out of taking, blah, blah, blah. The thing's a mess. I just don't think the Republican Party is ready to have a discussion on healthcare. We're against Obamacare, but I don't know what we're for. I know what I'm for. I don't see any consensus in Congress as to what we're for.
Well, look, first and foremost, I think President Trump is on to something in killing the filibuster, because we're not going to get anything done. And this is going to happen again in January, as has been said so many times. And I think the Republican Party on messaging strictly needs to gather together and create policy that they can capture the American public's attention on. So not Obamacare, but what is it? And you're right. I haven't heard sound communication on the strategy going forward, though President Trump has very explicitly said, I want the money in your pockets. I want you to have choice. So as they get together and create a better messaging, both on affordability, which the Democrats are going after, and on healthcare, I think we'll see, especially if we can kill the filibuster, I think we'll see upon January that actually the Republican Party is going to start delivering for the American people on those two issues. I think President Trump has already delivered on affordability. This healthcare just needs to be dealt with. And the Democrats, I don't think, to all of your points, want to have a conversation about it, because they actually are so concerned by funding illegal immigrants' healthcare, as we saw out here in California. that it does it and selling this package that doesn't work. So the Republicans have to get a little bit more strategic.
All right, guys, right now, Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off. If you've been wondering how I sleep so well at night, Beam's Dream Powder is the answer. Go to shopbeam.com. Use code SPICER at checkout. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. All natural ingredients, reishi, melatonin, L-theanine, magnesium. You're going to love it. Amazing flavor. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. Use code SPICER. So, Erika, the thing that's interesting to me, I've done a lot of thinking about what makes this Trump administration different than the one that I was in Trump 1.0. And one of the places I give a lot of credit is to where you are at America First Policy Institute. Like, you guys did a lot of the prep work to help the policies and the people and all that kind of stuff. Does America First Policy, are you guys in this fight? I know that's you've been really in leading efforts on education, so I don't mean to get you out of your wheelhouse on this, but like, I feel like we need some outside help and consensus and support, because Katie's right on the messaging, but I feel like we got to have something policy-wise to be driving people towards.
And when it comes to healthcare, there was some excellent work done by AFPI in that in-between phase when it was founded in 2021 through the new Trump presidency. But as we've just discussed, it really is up to Congress to take those good ideas, and there are many when it comes to healthcare solutions, and actually get them through the Congress. What we also have to face is that we have soft Republicans and those who are in purple districts who do not want to have this fight. And they are on our side. They are our majority makers. However, it is not a winning battle for us to continue these subsidies to bankrupt the American people. The healthcare system, we all know, is completely broken. And I agree with Chris. We have to face this battle. That is why the American people put us in power. It is why I also agree with Katie. We have to break up the filibuster. I've been saying this for a long time. If we're going to get good policy done for the American people and actually save this country and make America great again during the Trump presidency, we've got to do this now. We know the Democrats will do it when they're in charge.
Chris Stigall, you know what concerns me? I mean, this is what Erika's talking about, these subsidies, right? We've lost a sense of reality. The Democrats handed us a crappy healthcare system, Obamacare. When it didn't work, what did they do? They threw good money after bad and said, great, we'll just subsidize it. They did it temporarily, right? And then suddenly the clock says 0 left on the time, and they go, oh, now Republicans need to fix the problem, right? And here's the interesting thing is, I want to tie this in with a new Gallup poll. It says Americans are more positive towards capitalism than socialism, but the 54% viewing capitalism favorably is down from 60%. We don't, frankly, that's not capitalism. Subsidizing healthcare and telling everyone that you can get your own plan and then not. I mean, like, we're creating this false sense of reality, and no wonder people don't believe in capitalism anymore, because this is what we have. And frankly, what healthcare needs is more capitalism, more market forces to drive costs down. And we're seeing the opposite. In America, the American people are being told, no, socialism's the answer, Chris.
Democrats, not across the board, but a lot of them, particularly in pop culture, celebrated a kid for gunning down a health insurance executive in cold blood, this Mangione guy. I mean, there are people on the left that think he was a hero for killing a health insurance executive. And so I would just simply ask those who think that this was a great justice served, how do you justify then Democrats insisting that all of American taxpayers continue to line the pockets of the guy you're celebrating the murder of because he's a no good thief or whatever? Now, of course, that's outrageous, everything that I just said. But my point is, you got to pick a lane, Democrats. Do you hate the big, bad insurance companies, or do you want to continue to send all our tax dollars to them unabated? I would just say to Democrats, how do you defend and justify Americans just blindly handing over our tax dollars to insurance company coffers? I know a woman who has a daughter with some special health needs. She was on Obamacare here the last year. The children's hospital that's been serving her has just told them they're no longer going to accept the Obamacare program that she had been on, paying for some very expensive medications. Now, I don't know all the particulars around it, but that tells me that if a major children's hospital is saying no thanks to Obamacare, it stinks. And if major institutions are turning out Obamacare and leaving people holding the bag, now is the time for Republicans to tell the story that there is a better way.
Yeah. I think the other thing that sparked a lot of controversy in MAGA world this week is this whole top of H-1B visas. And I'll tell you, I said this on the morning meeting this morning. The president has a ironclad grip on his base. If there's one issue, though, that I think could be kryptonite-ish, it's H-1B visas and this immigration. I want to play the clip of what he said to Laura Ingraham on Fox that I think is what sparked a lot of the concern, renewed probably a lot of the concern about H-1 visas. Take a listen.
There's never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
mean
the
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put you.
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing. It's very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
All right, Katie, give me your thoughts on what we should be doing on H-1Bs.
This is such a complicated issue as he's talking and as Laura Ingram's debating him on this. Look, he's not wrong. Pulling people off of unemployment lines and then making complicated batteries, complicated missiles, however, is very difficult. And bringing in people who have specialized experience, who have done this before, where those factories are, he is definitely onto something. However, this balance of also employing unemployed Americans and allowing our economy to grow by giving, opportunities to Americans, is that this balance is really tough to strike, because to his point, and I lived in China, you see that there is, in these factories, there is a niche skill that needs to be honed, that is honed eventually. And all those batteries, I don't think he's proposing essentially China, but most of those batteries are coming from places like China and or Korea. And so this is difficult, Sean. I think there has to be a very narrow window and a very narrow gate for the H-1B visa program that's especially specialized, again, niche, and not this blanket flood. And I think that communication style, if effective, will be able to win over the base. However, if it's this all totality, this kind of came in line with what we've seen of the China student visas as well. I think there has to be some more direct messaging coming from potentially the White House and coming from the Republican Party on a specialized position on this, Sean.
Erika, I want to get into your wheelhouse on this, because you're all about education. So here's what I propose. The president loves talking to all these tech CEOs. They come in and hang out with them. So here's what I think. He tells them to pony up, and he says, each one of you, and again, I'll leave the numbers to the smarter people, but let's just call it 10 million a pop. You all are going to establish an apprenticeship program. It's a public-private partnership. You guys are going to fund it. Maybe there's some entity that could administer, where we start to train Americans in key technological and specialized trades. So it's a bridge. Okay, to the president's point, the batteries and the missiles, the tech stuff, like, we don't have those people today. Maybe, I don't know. But we will get them, we will train them, and you'll fund it. What do you think about that?
It's exactly my thinking on this, Sean. And to Katie's point, we need a more clear plan on how we move from foreign workers training into American workers and how that is exactly going to work. We are, however, putting President Trump in a difficult position because he has been negotiating these huge deals, $1 trillion of investments from tech companies in America in manufacturing under the existing rules. And although those existing rules and the H-1B visas are a scam and we need them to be completely reformed, and we see the Department of Labor doing these investigations, that's where those deals were established. Now, we hope that going forward, to your point, there's a lot more investment in making sure that Americans are ready for those jobs and that those investments do benefit American workers. I'm not sure that was the case with all of the investment that's coming to America, but it can be. He is the ultimate deal maker, and he absolutely needs to ensure for the American people that these jobs do ultimately go to Americans and benefit America first.
Chris Stigall, I don't know that. I think there's just a lot of people in MAGA that are tired of excuses and don't want to hear defense of these programs without a better solution.
Yeah, it's as the ladies have said, the messaging is tricky and there is a nuance to it. President Trump has to be careful, though, because as Laura Ingraham picked up on it, it's grating to hear the president of the United States say Americans aren't capable of learning this thing that they're doing over in China. Nobody wants to hear that. So he probably ought to shelve that and try to figure out a better, more nuanced way. Because after all, this whole tariff policy of the president's is to bring jobs and factories and makers of things back here. And the whole notion of it is rooted in the fact that AI is wiping out, potentially in the next 5 years, millions of white-collar jobs, educated people. So you can't say AI is going to wipe out a bunch of jobs, so we're trying to onshore jobs here, but at the same time, we got to import people from other countries because Americans who are unemployed can't do those jobs. It is tricky and it's nuanced, but the messaging is key. And guys like Scott Bessent do it better than anybody. I want more cowbell. I want more Bessent, Sean.
What do you want more Bessent of? To do what, though? Because here's the problem. I think that
explain.
Not just explain it. See, this is the problem. I feel like, and we'll talk about this in Epstein, I feel like people don't need to be explained to. They want a solution, which is, don't tell me why we need H-1B. Tell me what we're going to do.
Well, no, that's the goal. Bessent is good at explaining a goal. Here is, we're going from point A to point B. Here's why we're doing what we're doing. The lie that we just lent Argentina money.
He schooled us.
No, we didn't. That's not true. Or that we bailed Argentina out. We just handed them billion. That's not true, technically. He had to come in and explain we actually did a currency swap and we made money on the thing. It's the nuance that Bessent is good at explaining simply that I don't think the president always does maybe the best. That's what I mean. Yeah,
I get it, Katie. It's complicated, but at the end of the day, I feel like we need to start to address this. We talk about affordability. Laura was bringing up the fact that we're part of the issue for wages is that when you're bringing in people. So I think there's a combination. One, it's the reform, like you mentioned, which is we got to tighten the restrictions so that it's much more clear what you're doing and why. We could limit the scope and the duration, which is, okay, we'll allow people to come in for 10 years. But I think until we start creating a pipeline of Americans, we train them, we equip them. And that's why I to my point, make someone else fit the bill and say, great, we'll start establishing apprenticeships, educational opportunities for Americans to get trained on these skills. So there's no more excuses.
Actually, your apprentice program can go tandem with an H-1B, a limited H-1B visa program. You have a 5-year window, let's say, where one of these tech companies hires an H-1B visa to train. Part of the program, part of the requirement in this limited, a limited visa, a 5-year program where they're both manufacturing and starting it up, but also training up American workers, because this is specialized in niche. And I think for the president, I don't actually think he believes that Americans can't do it. I think it's, can they be put on the line right off the bat after 5 years of unemployment and understand this? So if he had had a little bit more time to unwind that and say clearly, if they have proper training, this can be effective, and proper training can come from those that have already been doing it in other countries. And the H-1B visa program can allow this apprentice program that you're speaking of, Sean, to exist on a 5-year window so we can jumpstart our manufacturing, so we can get nuanced skill sets in this. The messaging is just a little bit off, and I think that interview doesn't do justice for either his intentions for the United States. And also, Laura is speaking to our frustration, but also what are the solutions to the fact that we haven't been training people for so long on these programs. It's a both and situation.
Well, and Sean, if I could add to that, one of the things that also came up at this interview that was kind of maddening to me, and Laura called him on it as well, was the discussion of importing Chinese students to our Ivy League colleges, to which he said, if we don't do that, we'll have these distinguished universities collapse. Right. I don't know many Americans that care a whit.
I was going to say, I mean, I agree with your plan. However, we spend plenty of money on education in this country, mostly on the wrong things or on failing programs. It's not a lack of funding for preparing these students to take on these positions. It's that it's being spent on worthless degree programs, research that we don't need, schools and teachers unions that are not teaching our children how to be proficient in reading and math. As we've talked about before, only 1 in 3 American students are proficient in this country. And we're certainly not offering them pathways to the American dream that would include these high skilled jobs. So we know our education system needs to be completely reformed, but it is absolutely not a lack of funding to do so. It's funding being spent on the wrong things.
And I agree. And that's part of the reason I wanted it. I don't want the government to do this. I want it private money because they'll focus it. And again, part of this is that maybe you don't go to college. Maybe you go to some apprenticeship program that is funded, because a lot of times people say, if I don't have the money to do an internship or whatever, but if I could work there and have my, anyway, I agree.
Walmart's doing it. I mean, I know we're not talking about making missiles, but
and I feel like the private
Walmart's
sector,
training their middle managers.
Right.
Yeah.
But Eric, hold on. I'm sorry, Katie. I just want to ask Erika this because Chris brought it up, and this is her wheelhouse. I don't really care that Harvard collapses. I get the reason, the dirty secret that they all want Chinese students is because they pay full fare, right? And they don't get student aid. But I'm with Chris on this. I don't really care if Harvard falls. I mean, they have what, like a $5 billion endowment, and I'm supposed to cry because a bunch of Chinese students aren't going to come to our country? I'm sorry.
Yeah. There is no reason for us to continue to prop up these elite institutions, especially with the importation of foreign workers who are then taking American jobs. So I disagree with President Trump on this completely. I disagreed when we talked about allowing for these Chinese students, probably part of a larger deal. And I'm not going to, get into foreign policy. However, the reason to bring them in is not to ensure that Harvard continues, especially with the massive endowment that they can just dip into if they want to survive as an institution. But what would be a better plan to survive as an institution is to actually provide value back to the American people.
That's Katie, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I think there's even a larger issue. Having lived in Beijing for 3 years and understanding a lot of the background behind this and why do the Chinese want to send students to the United States, I think there's a national security issue involved in this as well. I don't want to give a percentage number or an over 50%, but a lot of these students are here to learn, be trained, bring information back to the CCP, infiltrate. We have seen time and time again, a lot of our institutions being infiltrated softly and even not so softly by Chinese influence, CCP influence. So you look at this and it's not always an innocent Chinese student that wants an opportunity in the United States. We have an entire city of Palo Alto homes have been purchased by Chinese citizens so their students can go to Stanford. And this then takes away opportunities for American home buyers in the Palo Alto area because the Chinese just sit on the real estate and don't live there. So it drives up the cost. And then it floods Stanford with Chinese students, taking away opportunities for American students with the underlying portion that now we have a national security issue and the Chinese are buying up a lot of our real estate, though you can't buy any real estate as an American in China. So there has to be some reciprocity. And there have to be limitations because this 600,000 just to hold up Harvard or Stanford or these Ivy League institutions has an underlying undercurrent of a national security issue, Sean.
100%. I again, for like a million reasons. A, there's a national security issue. B, I don't want to prop them up, the elite institutions. I mean, again, I'm like, the more we talk about it, I'm like, let's shut it all off. Like, it sounds like a winning proposition to me. And I will say, Erika brought this up before. There is clearly a foreign policy element, right? We're trying to get a trade deal with China. We're trying to do a rare earths deal with them. And so I think that the president diplomatically, and I would have had a lot more understanding if he just said, hey guys, we're entangled in this big diplomatic mess with China. This is not one of the things that I could have cut off. I would have respected that a lot more than we need them to keep Harvard propped up. I'm like, I don't know, and then to your point, Katie, I'm like, yeah, national security wise, that's another one. I want to go talk a little U.S. politics, though. There's a lot going on in Congress. The first thing is, we were talking about the government being open and whatever. I do think, Erika mentioned that January 30th, we're back in the situation. Erika, I think this is the end of Chuck Schumer. Like he's faced it big time from his own party this week. He got blamed for everything. I believe, like you, that we're going to be back in this situation January 30th, and it's going to repeat itself. Do you think that Chuck Schumer walks away on his own accord at the end of this term, or does he get primaried and lose?
Well, Chuck Schumer is having his John Boehner moment. If you remember back in the Tea Party days where, what would have at that time been considered the radical right kind of rose up, and their messaging, our messaging as being part of that, won out. And when they kind of took over power over messaging and many positions in Congress, were able to get rid of him as speaker. And it was a huge win. And it really pulled the entire party to the right. I see that happening on the left now. We see it with their radical left ideology and leadership, and they're doing exactly that to Chuck Schumer. That doesn't mean he's going to lose his election. John Boehner decided to leave, and I imagine that he will as well, especially if he's taken out of that leadership position. But I think we've seen history repeat itself in the past, and we're going to see that again on the left side.
So wait, I just want to get a clear answer. Does he step down? Does he say, I'm not seeking re-election on his own accord?
I think if he's removed, and I expect he will be, that he will not seek re-election after that embarrassment.
Chris Stigall, what do you think on that front?
I agree. I don't think he can weather it. I mean, Pelosi's packed her bags already, and I think he's soon to follow. He's a marked man. When Jimmy Kimmel starts doing monologue jokes about how old and dumb and slow he is, he's cooked. The memo's gone out. Get him out.
Katie?
He'll be done.
It's difficult, Sean, because I actually think Chuck Schumer, to his credit, didn't endorse Zohran Mamdani. He hasn't. The difficulty with him is his party has splintered off into almost full-fledged communism and socialism. And he has somewhat kowtowed, but also tried to maintain this, what could have been semi-moderate, and he failed completely. Although a Chuck Schumer staying in power is a lot more preferable than a Bernie Sanders, which is where the Democrat Party is going. We have socialism fully embraced. So Chuck Schumer has been in the Senate and in leadership and in power for, 40 years. And this all indicates term limits. And the Democrats are somewhat making fun of the fact that most of their people outside of McConnell and Nancy Pelosi have essentially aged out. I think it's better for the Democrat Party truly to keep a Chuck Schumer because it somewhat calms the storm. However, I think they are going full on into the socialism, communism, and I hope they do because it doesn't work for middle America, and it bodes well in my mind for the 26 midterms for the Republican Party.
All right, but the same question to you: does he decide or see the writing on the wall that I will lose if I don't step aside voluntarily? Because I think he doesn't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Or does he try to fight it out and make it through a primary in New York?
To be honest, I somewhat think he's going to try to fight it out a little bit. It would be difficult. He'll have a lot of party pressure. I think it will be very difficult, as it was for Pelosi, to give up power. Nancy Pelosi has long since seen her days. I think Chuck Schumer has a little bit of a fight left in him, and he somewhat still can get some of the moderate base behind him. So I don't know, Sean. I think he'll put up a fight. It might be, a contrary opinion.
No. See, this all goes back to self-awareness. I mean, the question is, does he know that he will lose, and is he comfortable with that? Because sometimes these guys their ego is too big, and they think, I can withstand this. I can do this. I got to think he steps aside, though, because you got to see all the polling that says AOC is going to crush you, and that's how you're going to end your career, with getting beat by a bartender. I think that at some point he's got enough. The polling just will be what it is. And they're going to come back and say, okay, do you want to fight this? It's going to cost you $30 million or $50 million or $100 million, whatever the number is, to get through a primary that you might not win. Or do you want to walk away with your head held high saying, I led the Senate and da-da-da-da? Because he's got two fights. He's got to get the primary win to then get reelected in New York. And then he's got to get enough of his colleagues. And I kind of think you're right, Katie. If he got there, he'd probably pull it out within his colleagues, but I don't think he gets to the primary. All right. The next,
and don't forget the biggest star of the party is now the mayor of the biggest city in America in his state, Zoran Mandami, who's been raising money like a vacuum hoovers up dirt, and that'll all be trained at Chuck, who was not the least bit helpful.
Oh, I know. That's why I said he didn't. When Katie brought up that Chuck didn't endorse him, I think that Schumer knew there's no sense. Like, the progressives already hate me. AOC's already, aligned with Mandami. So why cast my lot and then get crapped on by the moderates for endorsing?
They're the money raisers, though, as you know. I mean, they're the ones that are making the money. The Democrats, as an organization, can't earn jack, but these progressives are hoovering up money.
Yeah, that's true. That's where the action is. Speaking of the action and money, the House, one of the other things they're going to take up that I think will get some attention is Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is pushing this stock, that members can't trade stocks anymore. I asked Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show yesterday. She said, as long as it applies to everybody, meaning executive branch, et cetera, then it should, then that's fine. I respectfully disagree. I think, look, when I was in the White House, they made us sell any stock that we had. We could get a qualified mutual fund, which I'm on the team. Why not? If you like, I had to sell everything that I owned, which wasn't a ton, by the way, but they put it in a qualified mutual fund of your choosing. And that way, if the market goes up, you win. If the market goes down, you don't, but you're not invested in any particular stock. Katie, I just don't know how members of Congress right now aren't on board on this.
I don't understand either. It should be a bipartisan, unanimous support. This is look at following the allegations on our wonderful Congresswoman out of California, Nancy Pelosi. Following this trajectory is not sustainable, and it's actually very distasteful watching it. So, actually, Sean, I don't understand it either.
Erika, where do you think the movement is on this?
Well, obviously, we're personally affected by this, as my husband is a member of Congress, but we have never directed a single trade, neither one of us. But we do have active traders that trade on our behalf and have standing permission to do so. And that wouldn't be allowed on some of the bills that are out there. And so I think it is a nuanced position that absolutely Congress members should not be trading themselves, making decisions about stocks. But as you know, I mean, we were in the industry, like mutual funds are not going to provide the return that as Americans, we should be able to have access to if we're not, independently wealthy and we're going to be depending on those funds for retirement. So I think it has to be that detailed that, of course, we don't want members of Congress using their information to influence their stock purchases. That should not be allowed, but they should be able to delegate that responsibility as long as they're not involved in that decision making.
Chris Stigall, where do you think this thing goes?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of appetite for it. It's a discussion that's very similar to term limits. These are two subjects that most members just don't like. And look, I don't think everyone is ill-intended. I think term limits, in some sense, I can understand why when you have a ranking member, a high-profile, powerful member of Congress representing your district, that's a very good thing. Everybody hates Congress but loves their congressman, as they say, right? So I understand why members of the House would not necessarily voluntarily want this and are all kind of uniformly against it. And I don't think it's necessarily that everybody's of ill intent. It's just that the American public has long seen Congress as a place where you enter with maybe a couple of bucks and you leave far better off than you did, and everybody kind of wonders why.
Yeah.
Whether that's fair or not, that's the impression.
All right. I there's a topic that I don't like, but I would be not doing viewers a disservice if I didn't ask about this. On this Epstein thing, there's going to be a vote in the House. I want to just start with this round of questioning, and then we'll go down the rabbit hole a little. We asked this question on the morning meeting this morning. When the vote comes up to release the files, and I just want a number. I'll go around real quick. Give me a number of Republicans in the conference that vote for the resolution to release the Epstein files. Katie, give me a number. Ballpark.
Oh man, this is a very tough question. I think it's actually not going to be very high. It's probably mid 100s.
That's a high number. I'll be honest. That's half the conference. That's half the conference.
It's going to be pressure from their base on those congressmen. I don't think it's actually going to be a real desire. And I think the other half or the other group are going to really understand what this is. In my mind, it's a rabbit hole. It's a red herring distraction.
All right, Katie, Erika, do you think that, let's play with 100, above or below 100 Republican members vote for it?
Above, because I do think Mike Johnson comes around to pushing for it, because it will be an inevitability, right? He doesn't want to get rolled again to bring something to the floor without his permission, if you want to say it that way. So I think he ends up getting behind it, and you have a lot larger portion of the conference who votes for it.
Wow. Okay. Chris Stigall, we're playing with the number 100, above or below?
Erika has just changed my mind.
No, dude, I was waiting for you to say that, because I was in the 50 range, and then Erika Donalds just blew my mind, because I was like, she actually makes a really good point. Very strategic.
Listen, it is strategic, and I think to myself, if I'm a member of Congress, what's the upside to fighting this at this point? Let's the hell with it. Fine, yes, get it, go, take it, whatever. I mean, I would tell any Republican in Congress at this point, if asked, just vote to vet the thing and get this out of the way. Quit fighting it.
All right, 2 more questions on this, and then I want to get to winners and losers. Here, we're going to do the same thing. The House procedurally has to do this. This is a discharge petition, so they have to have a vote on it. And I agree with Erika now more than ever. But here's the question. It then goes to the Senate. John Thune doesn't technically have to do anything, but there'll be a lot of pressure from his base to do it and from the Trump administration not to. Katie, does Thune put this up for a vote or not?
Oof, I might be another contrarian view. I don't think he does it before the midterm elections.
Okay. Erika, blow my mind again, because I'm torn on this one, to be honest with you.
I don't think he touches it. The Senate doesn't have the same pressure as House members do to listen to the base or to do anything the base is pressuring them to do. And historically, they haven't. So I think he doesn't touch it. It sits there.
See, I'm with you on this, because the Johnson can tell Trump, hey, I can't do anything. These are the House rules. Thune has a choice. And I think the White House is going to say, hey, speaking of John Boehner and Kevin McCarthy, do you want to be leader still? Because we'll crush you like a bug. Chris Stigall, do you agree with us, or do you think it might come up for a vote?
Yeah, I stand again with the future First Lady of Florida, but I will say Thune could do a big diversionary tactic and do what Katie said. Let's blow up the filibuster. What do you say?
Well, okay, what do you mean? So blow up I agree with that. First of all, I think in January that filibuster thing is coming back big time, because at some point I am a big believer in the filibuster, big believer, but you got to be nuts to think the Dems aren't going to do this to us. So
no, look, it will short circuit everything. Nothing will be. Epstein won't even be. They can't. They will. Sean, they'll lose their ever-loving minds. If Thune does that and they start rubber stamping legislation in 2026, good grief. Katie, bar the door.
Yeah. All right, my last question, no pun intended. Does President Trump commute the sentence of Ghislaine Maxwell in any way? Katie?
I think there's some grounds to commute her sentence. So
okay, you better back that up quick.
Deputy AG Todd Blanche went down and had long discussions with her. Obviously, I don't know so much of the entirety of this. I think if she's willing to offer information or be cooperative, the sentence gets commuted. President Trump's pretty generous with people who come around and want to be helpful. I'm not going to say it as a declarative statement. I just think it's not off the table.
Erika?
If he does, it will be in January 2029. He is absolutely not going to do it before then.
I hope that's well, first of all, I don't think she deserves a pardon or a
I agree. Absolutely
anything.
not.
What that woman has done, and there's so many victims. Chris Stigall, do you I think we've got 2 probably nots. Where are you?
Agreed. She's already been moved to give a little more testimony, and that's as good as she's going to get until President Trump's done. Yeah,
and I hope that he still is told, like, this is a bad idea. She deserves to be in jail for what she did. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.